Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to class 106 on the mind of God, which sounds very pretentious, and I suppose with any other religion it might be. But the fact is, we are given to understand what God's intentions are in bringing about creation. And I think it will become clear what I'm getting at before this class is over, and we'll continue with that sequence of thought over the next several classes, though we're going to also continue utilizing the tools for understanding imagery and symbolism as it becomes very useful and very needful insofar as figuring out the deeper meanings of these spiritual concepts of causality. Causality, in this case, dealing with how does creation come into being, through what process it comes into being, what its intent is, and where are we in that process insofar as our particular planet is concerned. We're going to deal with some pretty heady questions insofar as the size of the universe, the beginnings of the universe, and so on. From a Baha'i point of view, as borne out in the Baha'i writings, not necessarily in agreement with all of what scientific minds might proffer as the correct response, even though the writings say very importantly that science and religion agree, and that if they do not agree, one or the other or both are incorrect in how they're portraying reality. We'll deal with that question as we continue. So let me share my screen and go up to the beginning and start with, just a minute, show the slides from the beginning. All right, here we go. And let me push this out of the way. Again, as last week, if you want to, you can unmute yourself if you have something urgent to tell me, if something's going wrong and you're not getting the video or something like that. But save your questions or comments till the end. You might want to write them down because as I say, we're going to be dealing with some rather abstruse matters, but I hope to make them less abstruse, which is our whole idea of learning how to interpret symbolism and imagery. So the title of tonight's class is The Mind of God and the Structure of Reality, Part 1, because this will be an ongoing discussion with a number of parts. I don't know how many until we get through. Class 106. And then this is an image that of a book that is not yet written. I've written about 260 pages on it as a first draft. And it's on, of course, this very subject, the mind of God and the structure of reality, the implication of which is that if we understand what God's intention is in bringing about creation, we'll understand how he has structured reality the way he has. And it's a very comforting concept, I have found. So this is a mock cover. This book is not yet finished or published, but I sometimes inspire myself by creating a future cover. We had last week homework for you, and that homework, if you remember, was to say the morning prayer in the evening or midnight prayer in the morning, and see what results you had. And we'll discuss what you came up with in the Q&A, but just to give you an idea of what I had in mind, what that forces you to do is to see the imagery or symbolism in the terms, particularly the term of night and day. And those of you who've studied the writings for a while know that nighttime, insofar as the sequence of history is concerned, is a period of darkness that occurs after the prior religion has declined and its effectiveness has dissipated, and it is time for the new religion to begin. And so nighttime in almost every part of the writings is symbolizing this period of darkness that occurs, that we're in right now, that seems dark. But the dawning, of course, and this is why we call the first believers in this dispensation and this new cycle the dawn breakers, because they were bringing in the dawn of a new day. And of course, day, excuse me, day is a symbol of a new dispensation. So that's not an authoritative interpretation. It's what that exercise was intended to make you see, or allow you to see, that if we're used to taking so many of these things literally, that the morning prayer means that it is literally the morning. And of course, when you say it in the morning, it is, and it alludes to that. But the deeper meaning is that it's the morning of a new dispensation. So I thought I've always found that interesting to do. If you say them at the wrong time, you get a more in-depth meaning. Your assignment for next week is to take this statement, which is in the letter to the King Nasiruddin Shah. It is included, the letter is in the Summons of the Lord of Hosts, that book, which, and in particular, it's included in the Suri Hakel, where Baha'u'llah says, I was but a man like others asleep upon my couch, when lo, the breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing, and he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven, and for this befell me what hath caused the tears of every man of understanding to flow. Now, this relates to something we're going to discuss next time, namely the ontology of the manifestations, their nature of their being. Because we had 2 classes ago in the Q&A discussion about, does the revelation emanate from the mind of Baha'u'llah or from the mind of God, and then articulated through Baha'u'llah? This would seem to confirm that, well, it's not from Baha'u'llah, it's from God speaking through Baha'u'llah. So we're going to deal with that in some depth next week. So see what you can, what you think about what this means. Basically, the question is, when does the manifestation become a manifestation? That's all of these questions are answered very specifically and authoritatively in the Baha'i writings. The book we alluded to last time when we dealt with the circle of ontology is now available in a re-available. It was written some years ago by Nadir Saidi, Logos and Civilization, Spirit, History, and Order in the Writings of the Baha'i Faith. He is in this book dealing with something of the same thing that my book is dealing with, and that is how is the structure of reality related to the purpose of God. And of course, Logos means the word, in the beginning was the word, and the word causes civilization, and in a particular order and a particular manner as it progresses. And so this ontological circle we're going to look at again tonight, and I've given you this link to the where you can purchase the new edition of this book, Logos and Civilization. I think you will find it extremely interesting. So the Association for Baha'i Studies book publication, which I'm the editor of, is republishing this along with a number of other books. And this is the excuse me, this is the same link, but we're going to deal with chapter 2, not in depth tonight, but we're going to only deal with the first stage in this ontological circle. And for those of you who weren't there or did not see the class, ontology, as I've said before, means the nature of being, what Nadir calls the thingness of something, what Mujan Moman calls the quiddity, which I like very much, but it means the essential reality. And in the same way that we have our physical reality and so on, but our essential reality is our soul. And the same thing is true with God. God has a reality that we can understand, but his essential reality we will never understand. So when we say God is unknowable, no, God is quite knowable. We really mean to say God is essentially unknowable, which explicitly means we can't know the essence of God, how God works in his mind and his essential reality. And the same thing is true with ourselves and with the manifestations. So let's go to this. This is printed right out of and you can't see it as well here. This is printed right out of the book of the first version, the first publishing of Nadir's book. And this appears in this chapter on the ontology, the ontological circle. And what is it's talking about, as I said last time, you have the idea of from God emanates, and I'm going to put here the mind of God, because it's from the mind of God, the creativity or intention of God, that he brings about the manifestation. And from the manifestation's mind, you have the descending circle, and that is from his mind, we bring into being various stages of this process until ultimately we have here at the bottom, you can see the various kingdoms of physical reality, at the top of which is the human being, because it is the human being that has the capacity to make this ascent. And so you have two arcs, the arc of descent, where you have the emanation from the mind of the manifestation of the process to bring creation into being. And then from this, with the help of the manifestations and with the help in the seven valleys, for example, of our own struggle to understand, our search, we fall in love with what we discover, and then we attain knowledge of what it is we've discovered. And then from that, we escape the the levels of earthly plane and ascend beyond the mortal plane to a sense of unity with the totality of the creation, a stage of contentment and wonder. And then finally, of course, in the seven valleys, stated a little differently, but the concept of annihilation in the sense, as I understand it, and of course this is a very subtle thing to understand, is that we happily feel ourselves merged with the totality of creation. We don't have a sense of our ego or our self as being as struggling to assert ourselves as separate from or better than the competition kind of thing. It doesn't mean, however, literally, and this is why, again, this imagery is so important, it doesn't literally mean that we that our self disintegrates or joins with God, as the Sufis believe, that we become one with God. No, we never become one with God, but we have a sense of unity with the totality of creation. So, what questions derive from this ontological circle? That is, what do we need to know about it? And this is what our next classes are going to be about. First of all, why does God feel the need to create anything in the first place? If God is self-sufficient and quite content with his own being, obviously, why should he feel the need to create anything? Secondly, why does God feel the need to create, that should be feel the need to create two dimensions? Why does he feel two dimensions are necessary? Why not just create the spiritual dimension and have us come into being there? Because that's where we're headed anyway. What's the purpose of having the two dimensions? Well, we've discussed this very early in other classes, but this is what prompted me to write the first book in a series of books, the last of which most probably will be this book on the mind of God, which has to do with the purpose of physical reality. So why physical reality? Why doesn't God create us the way he wanted us to be in the first place? Why do we have to go through a process which involves our own participation, our own action, our own recognition? And so why doesn't he simply make everything clear to us from the beginning? Why do we have to struggle to understand? Why does the physical dimension conceal its purpose? Why, if the purpose of physical reality is to teach us about spiritual reality, as the writings say it does, well, why is it so concealed? Why is it so hard to understand the spiritual purpose of physical creation? These are sort of nuances of the same question, aren't they? Are there other planets capable of sustaining human life? Now, this question may seem unrelated, but it's not. If so, do they have their own manifestations? And the answers to all these are in the writings. If you, well, we're going to discover them in the next classes. How big is the universe according to the Baha'i scriptures? Most scientists, well, again, it's hard to say most because the scientific conclusions about the cosmos are changing now with the Webb telescope on almost seems a weekly basis, so that there are about 10 different theories about the universe and how it's shaped, whether it's infinite or whether it's contained, and so on. The writings are very clear. How many planets capable of sustaining human life are there? Does the universe have a systematic structure, or is it just a scattering of a whole bunch of planets? If it does, what part does our planet play in the purpose of God's creation? Does the universe as a whole have any final objective? In other words, is there an end point in this process of bringing planets into being and have them become spiritualized? Can there be more than one universe? And this is a question that doesn't come up so much in the Baha'i writings. The answer to it does, but it's something that some scientists pose as a possible hypothesis, that there's the universe we can see, and then there are other universes beyond that. So let's deal with the first question. Why does God create anything in the first place? And of course, the easiest answer is because, being all-knowing and omniscient and beneficent, he thinks it's a good idea. He wants to do it, so it must be a good idea. But that's sort of a circular thinking. That doesn't really answer the question. He must have a reason why he thinks it's a good idea. And the answer to that question is very specific in the writings, but it requires a lot of study. And that is the hadith of the hidden treasure. Now, if you've been with my classes for a while, you know we've been over this before, but you can never get enough out of it. And there is a wonderful work, which is not authoritatively translated. I'm hoping it will come out soon. Some parts of it are, and we're going to quote one of the parts that has been. where that is explicated by Abdul Baha. It's called his commentary on the hidden treasure, the hadith of the hidden treasure. The word hadith, of course, means a tradition, an Islamic tradition. And a tradition means something that Muhammad may have said, or one of the imams may have said, but it's not considered necessarily authoritative. It wasn't written down when Muhammad was in a state of revelation. But it may still be authoritative. This one is stated very simply. And this is God speaking again, if you remember the questions we should begin to ask when we're dealing with a poetic or symbolic phrase. I was a hidden treasure. And so the first person speaker here is God. I was a hidden treasure. I wished to be made known. And thus I called creation into being in order that I might be known. Now, of course, hidden treasure is obviously symbolic. Concealed. Why is God concealed? Well, in the beginning, God is concealed because there is nothing created. And so he chooses to be known. And so we ask, why does he want to be known? But, well, he called creation into being that he can create a being capable of knowing him and a process by which that can occur. But again, but why? Why does he think it a good idea that he be known? There are authoritative notes in the Kitabi Agdas, and all of the, not all of the several slides that follow are from that note, which is dealing with that hadith. This is in the back of the Agdas, and the notes are authoritative. And this is a quote from the hidden word, Arabic number 4. And it's sort of, if you will, a parallel to the hidden treasure, the hadith of the hidden treasure. And again, as with most of the hidden words, the persona or the speaker is not Baha'u'llah, but God. Baha'u'llah is representing the voice of God. O Son of Man, I loved thy creation, hence I created thee. Wherefore do thou love me, that I may name thy name and fill thy soul with the spirit of life? Well, there's one answer. God created us because he loved our creation. But why does he love our creation? Well, you can say on the one hand, very simply, because God is a God of love and a God, and if you are a loving person, you feel the need to have something to understand your love and share your love and receive your love. So that's part of the answer. Then this is a reference to a prayer by Baha'u'llah, as you can see at the bottom. This is from Prayers and Meditations, number 38. Lauded be thy name, O Lord my God. I testify that thou wast a hidden treasure, wrapped within thine immemorial being, and an impenetrable mystery, enshrined in thine own essence. And here again, that essence, very important. So in other words, if God remained simply in his essence, we would never be able to understand anything about him. Wishing to reveal thyself, thou didst call into being the greater and the lesser worlds. Now, is that referring to the spiritual world and the physical world, or is it referring to the universe as a whole and the planetary systems within it? And didst choose man above all thy creatures, and didst make him a sign of both these worlds. So it must be referring to the spiritual world and the physical world. O thou who art our Lord, the most compassionate, thou didst raise him up to occupy thy throne before all the people of thy creation. Thou didst enable him to unravel thy mysteries, so he bestowed upon us the capacity of mind and thought and reflection to understand, but not except within the help of the manifestations, and to shine with the lights of thine inspiration and thy revelation, and to manifest thy names and thy attributes. Of course, man, according to the writings, is capable of manifesting all the attributes of God. But the manifestation inherently manifests all the attributes of God and does so perfectly, which we will never be capable of doing. This is one sign, as we will get to next time, of the different station or ontology of the manifestations. They are not normal or mortal human beings in the sense that you and I are. Through him thou didst adorn the preamble of thy book of thy creation, O thou who art the ruler of the universe, thou hast fashioned. So God fashioned the universe that he might reveal himself. The parental analogy, which I've mentioned before, is for me the best way of explaining why a being that does not need something to worship wants to have something not to worship. A being capable of worshiping him would want this. And I say that because if you are a parent or have been a parent, you know that this is not only an important obligation, but the most important, or among the most important obligations we have as beings, is to bring forth someone who will advance civilization by recognizing God and God's purpose. And if you know people who want to have children and can't, you know that they will do just about anything to have children, because this is such an inherent purpose that we have instilled in us from our inception. So the primary purpose of marriage, according to the writings, is to bring forth children, to create a fortress for well-being. It's not the only purpose. So that fortress is a way of establishing a relationship that helps you go through the various problems and steps in your progress in this world. But to bring forth other souls into this world to serve God and love him. That's from the writings. Why do we want to have children? If you've had children or have children, you know that there is a great deal of struggle and it never ends. You are never without the sense of obligation to assist them, without care for what's happening to them. Among the motives which are the most altruistic, and that is, we can have unpure motives for wanting children, to perpetuate the family name, to have them make a name for ourselves so we can say, look what my son or my daughter accomplished. But the altruistic, that is the purest motives, are to participate in bringing forth a new being, that this being might experience our love and our joy, because it is one of it is the most joyful thing you can experience, is to bestow love and to participate in a loving relationship. But of course, as we said before, a loving relationship requires a bilateral relationship. And that means that you have to be such a good parent that they will love you. But you can't force it. You can't make someone love you. And that's the subtlety. Remember the hidden word where God says to us, love me that I may love thee. If thou lovest me not, my love can in no wise reach thee. Know this, O servant. So even though God is omnipotent, he can't make us love him. He can give us every opportunity and incentive, but our love is of free will, or else it has no value. To pass on the hard-won knowledge we have gained, that we wish our own parents had given us. And this doesn't mean we disdain our parents, but we hope that maybe we can learn from their parenting and do a better job. Though in our current society, we may realize or may feel that, as I know I do many times, that I'm not doing nearly as good a job as my parents did, because they lived in a society where there weren't so many, where society largely reinforced their concept of the good person, whereas we live in a society that tears at every incentive we have to become good people or to help our children become good people. So society, which is the greatest teacher, the most overwhelming teacher, is not colluding with us in our objective. To advance the body politic by creating a more advanced society. Now, this is in that, from that same note in the Kitab-i Aqdas, but this is a part of the commentary on the Hadith of the Hidden Treasure by Abdul Baha. So this is authoritatively translated, but it's only part of that commentary, which is very lengthy. O wayfarer in the path of the beloved, know thou that the main purpose of this holy tradition, the tradition of the hidden treasure, is to make mention of the stages of God's concealment and manifestation. Two different things. Then he is concealed and then he becomes manifest, but through stages. It doesn't happen all at once, just as our knowledge and understanding of Baha'u'llah doesn't come to us in one day. Or, we may become aware of his station and accept it in a day, but we spend the rest of our lives coming to understand all that he is trying to teach us. So God's concealment and manifestation within the embodiments of truth, they who are the dawning places, capital D, this is referring to the manifestations of his glorious being. For example, before the flame of the undying fire is lit and manifest, it existeth by itself within itself in the hidden identity of the universal manifestations. And this is the stage of the hidden treasure. So that's the station of its hiddenness. And when the blessed tree is kindled by itself within itself, and that divine fire burneth by its essence within its essence, this is the stage of I wish to be known. Now, this is very difficult stuff to understand. And this is why I will tell you that a very good translation of the total work, the commentary on the hidden Hadith, the hidden treasure, is available. I think it's translated by Mujan Modin, but if you simply Google it, you can find it in a Baha'i library. So it's not authoritative, but it's a very decent translation, and you can try to understand more of this. But this is very abstruse concepts, and I won't try to explain them right now because we're going to go through this process step by step. But suffices to say, this is the point at which the manifestation becomes desirous of manifesting the attributes of God. And when it shineth forth, this is a continuation of the same quote, and when it shineth forth from the horizon of the universe with infinite and divine names and attributes upon the contingent and placeless world, this constituteth the emergence of a new and wondrous creation, which correspondeth to the stage of thus I called creation into being. So this would be the creation of a planet, or perhaps you can say all the planets, or in other words, the creation itself. Not all the planets at once, but when creation begins. And when the sanctified souls rend asunder the veils of all earthly attachments and worldly conditions, and hasten to the stage of gazing on the beauty of the divine presence, and are honored by recognizing the manifestation, and are able to witness the splendor of God's most great sign in their hearts. Most great sign is obviously an allusion to the manifestations. Then will the purpose of creation, which is the knowledge of him who is the eternal truth, become manifest. So this would be at the beginning of the arc of ascent. So why does the Creator create anything? And I think it's valuable, not only the parental analogy, but the analogy of anyone who is a creative person, a painter, architect, composer, poet, potter, sculptor, craftsman, artisan, businessman who wants, or businesswoman who wants to bring into being a business that hopefully provides some service for humankind. That's creative. And doing it well requires a great deal of creativity. So why does any creator create? Well, there are a number of things. One is the painter wants to communicate what he or she is feeling. The architect wants to provide a place that conveys a certain ambience, a certain sense of worship, if it's a Mashriqulah's car, and so on. And so on. I don't need to go through each one. Suffice it to say, each one is trying to communicate something, and the Creator is trying to communicate something with bringing creation into being, and that is information about himself, that we may come to understand that self, and by process of coming to understand it, understand ourselves, and experience the love that the Creator has to provide us. So when did God's wish occur? When did he first decide, by golly, I think I want to be known? How indescribably lofty are the tokens of his consummate power, a single sign of which, however inconsiderable, must transcend the comprehension of whatsoever hath, from the beginning that hath no beginning, been brought into being or will be created in the future, till the end that hath no end. There's nothing you can derive from this in the way of meaning, except that there is no beginning and there is no end to this process. To put it very simply, excuse me for a second. To put it very simply, if God is God and God wishes to be known, this wish didn't suddenly occur. The desire and the knowledge of God that he wished to be known is from the beginning of God's existence. And since God has ever existed, then this wish has ever existed. And since this wish has ever existed, then creation itself must have no beginning, but has always existed. We'll deal with that some more later. But you've seen this phrase over and over in the writings, the beginning that hath no beginning, the end that hath no end. So that's the main points that I wanted to get in this very beginning process of the study of this ontological circle. Because, and this is the Center for the Study of the Text at the World Center. And I have that on my classes before. I had the Qibla, the point of adoration, to end. But I thought, since we are on some pretty difficult things to study, that it would be inspirational to realize that one of the central buildings on the ark, that the far-flung ark that is on Mount Carmel, is a center dedicated to studying the holy text, because that's what we're doing. So if we can go back to the beginning of the ontological circle, you can see where we have gotten is, on the one hand, we've really just gotten this far. What is God's purpose? What did his mind conceive of as the purpose? But we also mentioned the ark going where he brings creation into being, that we might come to proceed with this process. In the future, we're going to try to understand a little bit about these. They're very difficult, because whereas these are not so difficult to understand, because we experience them not just once, but over and over again. So we fall in love many times with Baha'u'llah and with God through Baha'u'llah. And we go through these several stages until we are, and many times in our life, we'll feel like, that we are completely selfless, that we give ourselves wholly and completely to Baha'u'llah. If we're a martyr, that occurs in one instance, and then we're in the realm of the spirit. But for most of us, we go through this almost on a daily basis and reconsider. But these are very abstruse because they are spiritual processes. It's a spiritual process by which you go from the essential reality or the mind of the manifestation after he has been inspired by the mind of God through these various processes of ultimately revealing a book which and bringing into being the material the four major kingdoms that Baha'u'llah, that Abdu'l-Baha mentions in some answered questions: the mineral kingdom, the vegetable kingdom, the animal kingdom, the human kingdom, and of course the fifth kingdom is the realm of the spirit. Well, I'll stop sharing now, and so that will do with my presentation for tonight. We didn't cover a great deal insofar as content is concerned, and that is many ideas, but I was trying to make clear just one idea, and that is why God creates in the first place.